Whatever you do, give it 100%, except if you're giving blood. Hi everyone, I'm Judy Arizosa, and this is the Air Hug Community Podcast. Today we are on episode 124. Wow, I can't believe it. And this is the first episode that's being aired in 2023, so Happy New Year, everyone. And this episode is all about why I don't want you, or I want you to think about not setting goals in 2023. But first, let's just hear a little recap of what the Air Hug Community Podcast actually is about. Okay, so off the cuff, I'm not going to give you the old recorded versions I did in 2022. What is the Air Hug Community? This is a podcast aimed at and inviting in midlife women to have a listen about how midlife unfolds. It's all about the good, the bad, the ugly, and all the emotions. We will occasionally have guests. A lot of times I will research topics that come up in our Grateful Fitness gym, and we're all here just to support one another on living a better midlife. So you ready? Let's get going today and talk about goals. So by the way, that quote at the beginning that I just spoke about a minute ago is by Bill Murray. Okay, so why am I asking you to consider not setting goals in 2023? Well, let's talk about this for a minute. Okay, so how many times have you set a goal in the new year, aka a resolution, only to abandon it somewhere, before Valentine's Day? Think about it. I mean, it happens a lot. Or maybe you do reach your goal, but what do you do after that? So today we're going to talk about why it's not a bad idea to abandon the whole goal setting thing. So I'm going to start with a little story. Back in the early 20-teens, how do you say that? The years between like 2010 and 2020. They're not the 20s. They're not the O's. Whatever. I'm going to call them the 20-teens. Anyways, I set a goal to do a certain number of push-ups a day, somewhere in that decade, early in that decade, and for an entire fall season. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was in response to Veteran Suicide Awareness. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Well, all someone has to say to me is, you have, in my old mindset, you're going to do this every day for X number of days, come hell or high water. And so I did it, came hell or high water. I did it when I was tired. I did it when I was sore. And guess what? I accomplished that goal. But guess what else? It came at a cost. I ended up with an impinged shoulder that still haunts me. Okay, so I did not take into account what my body was telling me on certain days. Like, maybe you should warm up a little bit more before you do those uninterrupted sets of push-ups. Maybe you should stop. Maybe you should work on shoulder stability. Nah, I ignored all of those little voices in my head in favor of completing the goal at all costs. So, and at another point in my life, actually just a few years before that, I had set a goal of doing 100 push-ups every time I did chest day. Same problem, same result. I will say that I didn't even learn the first time around. So goals are not necessarily always a good way to accomplish things in your life. So a lot of people look at goals as really, really important, especially like business school people, but anyone for any topic or anything that you want to accomplish. I know the business school model is to talk about BHAGs. Have you ever heard of that? BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goals. I was actually in a mastermind in 2018, and we were highly encouraged to set big, hairy, audacious goals for our businesses. Can I tell you, I never did get around to doing it. But anyways, it just kind of scared me. I'm like, I don't want to be audacious. What the heck is this mastermind coach of mine talking about? But anyways, let's get back to where we are now. Goals can make sense, right? If you don't know where you're going, without a goal, you might never arrive anywhere, right? I can believe that. Or when you don't set a bar at a certain level, you may not live up to it. Of course, there's a downside to that too, but we'll talk about that in a little while. Speaking of business school, have you heard of the Harvard Business School class study? Ever heard of it? So it goes like this. 3% of graduating students wrote down clear goals. 20 years later, those 3% were worth 10 times the amount of the rest of the class combined. So, guess what I'm going to tell you about that? That story is fake news. Yes, folks, it's just urban legend. It never happened, but apparently some people in many business circles and schools were spreading that as a truth, but it isn't. So I just want to set that right out there. So here's the thing about goals. You may want to ponder which goals and how to set them. And that's what we commonly do. It's like, okay, what should my goal be? Especially at the new year. What should my goal be? What should my goal be? I'm going to go into the example today of how people set, or why people set goals and what happens when they do and what the negative effects are. But have you ever thought of the idea of not even setting goals? Don't do goals. I know there are some people who actually don't do that. Some people have a word of the year that they might think about, but let's stick to goals as our topic today. So goals can be a pure idea, right? They're not exactly toxic, but they have side effects. So like with just about anything else, there's the good and the bad that go with things, right? The pros and cons. So a real Harvard Business School research paper called Goals Gone Wild actually researched, that's why it's a research paper, and concluded that the upside of goals are actually exaggerated and the downside of goals are actually disregarded. So it's kind of like a falsehood. We're actually believing what I would almost call a half-truth, right? So there are harms that can happen from goal setting, all right? And they can contribute to lots of things, all right? I'm going to tell you about them quickly. There's 3 of them. One is neglect. Number 2 has to do with being unethical. And number 3 has to do with distortion. So let's go to number 1, neglecting non-goal entities. So for example, when I decided I was going to do 100 push-ups on every chest day, come hell or high water, and I had another friend who did a squat challenge. She was going to do, I forget however many squats it was a day, no matter what. For me, I didn't think about the non-goal entities that could happen, like ended up with an impinged shoulder, or the person that I knew that ended up with knee pain from actually rushing through the squats and not doing them properly, which was the same thing with my push-ups. I rushed through them because I got to get it done, right? To getting to the point of hell or high water. So, not such a great thing, right? You don't want to achieve your goal at all costs. What about the person who has to go to the doctor maybe in 2023 and they're like, I am going to lose a certain amount of weight by that date no matter what? And they might want to turn to some things I would call unethical, right? So I'll give you a better example of being unethical. Let's talk about the Ford Pinto. Do you guys remember the Ford Pinto? If you're in midlife, you probably remember it vaguely. In 1970, there was a goal to come out with a car that weighed 2,000 pounds and was only $2,000. And because of that goal, the Ford Pinto was born. Well, the problem is it became unethical because those cars caught fire if they were rear-ended, and they actually resulted in loss of life. So people, in order to get that 2,000 pound limit and $2,000 price tag, they skipped a lot of safety things that they shouldn't have. So it became unethical because people actually died. Here's another one. Sears Auto Repair came up with, and I don't remember what this year this was, a goal of getting $147 an hour for their auto repair work. And it motivated employees to vastly overcharge. So hopefully you didn't go to Sears for your auto repair at that time because you probably paid too much. So that's what I'm talking about. But, it's basically, lying and cheating your way through. And especially when people are trying to get healthier, although they often disguise that as losing weight, I see, a lot of unethical behaviors can happen. And let's talk about the distortion of the risk taking that can come from setting a do or die goal. All right, here's another example. New York Jets quarterback. You can tell I had fun actually researching this. Anyways, New York Jets quarterback Ken O'Brien. He was throwing too many interceptions. In Seoul, the goal was there was a financial penalty being put out every time he threw an interception. So instead of learning how to not throw interceptions and work better with his team, he simply threw the ball less. And the problem was that his performance crapped out and the whole team suffered from that. So, it was a distorted. He didn't want to take the risk, right, of throwing the ball because, and how many times have you not wanted to take a risk? So you've changed your goals, right, so that they were safe. This is a great example of that. So it can really distort our thinking. Okay, so here's the thing, is we can't really predict outcomes. We can't control outcomes, nor can we predict the negative or positive effects of a goal, right? I guess if you reach your goal, you can say you reached it, but you really can't predict what negative effects are going to come if you're going to do it at all costs, if you're going to give that 100% just to that goal, if your only eye is on the goal. So many people talk about making your goals smart. Have you ever heard that? Specific, measurable, time-related, yada, yada, yada. Remember, the problem with these is you can talk about all that. I think that's a very idealistic viewpoint because the bottom line is you can't control outcomes. Yes, you can hit your goal, but at what cost and what are you doing to get it, especially if you're trying to do it by a certain date. So I like to think of the example of a narrow focused goal. And this is the time of year when people, maybe coming off the holidays, are often thinking about losing weight, X pounds by Y date. Maybe you have a wedding, a vacation, or an upcoming doctor's appointment where you want to weigh a certain number. This can really backfire. It can actually lead to, restrictive eating that can become so restrictive that it becomes disordered, which can often be followed by a rebound disorder, which would be binge eating disorder or uncontrollable cravings. All right, and this is a big problem because let's say your only goal is that number on your scale. You may get so distorted in your thinking.
Looks like we've still got you free.
That I don't know why, sorry, my iPhone is accepting phone calls and I really don't want it to. That's bizarre. Okay, let's get back to where we were. Where was I? This whole thing about getting to that number no matter what, that can really lead to disordered eating. And I've talked about this in the past. Disordered eating can lead to a full-blown eating disorder. And that is not just literally one thing or another. It could be a number of different eating disorders. And oftentimes it is more than one. So this is where an innocent thing with trying to lose weight instead of trying to be healthier, right, can really backfire. So we can talk about, the cost of that. Let's think of the cost of what achieving that goal might have been. It's a new problem. Now you have disordered, I'm not saying you do, but you could potentially have disordered eating, right? And then you may not even be able to recognize hunger or fullness because you've been ignoring it for so long. Or you may have a lot of mental aerobics going on in your head of doing all these calculations of how often to eat, how much, and what you're eating. And this can actually take up so much space in your brain that you're actually missing out on life. And I'm going to say, ask me how I know that, right? I consider myself to be in recovery from disordered eating. So that's another story. I'll be happy to talk with you about it anytime. But Here's the thing, the weakness of goal setting is you don't learn any new healthy skills or actionable skills that you can use lifelong. You might learn some skills like disordered eating, but they're not going to serve you well if your only focus is on a goal. But if you, speaking of the word focus, if you switch to a focus versus a goal, now the story changes a little bit, right? So you are trying to acquire new skills to manage healthy eating and healthy living. And then if you lose weight, that's a byproduct of it. If you lose weight, it's because your body is going to lose weight naturally from this healthy focus, right? Versus forcing it upon your body to lean out maybe in a way that does not serve your health so well. So, all right, so the alternative to goal setting is changing to a focus. So let's talk about the difference between a goal and a focus. A goal is outcome desired. It's an outcome you desire. But remember, you can't really control outcomes. A focus is a path, right? A focus is a path you're going to take. It's actionable. It's something you're going to do differently. A goal is in the future. I'll be happy when I get to a weight of X on Y date. That's a goal. A focus is something you do in the present and actionable. Today, I practiced balanced eating. Today, I ate a normal amount of vegetables for a healthy lifestyle, etc., etc. Those are just examples, right? Today, I will focus on eating when hungry, eating slowly, and stopping at relative fullness. That's a focus. That's not a goal, right? Now, you could have both a goal and a focus, right? Maybe your focus is to eat 2 meals a day. Your goal is to eat 2 meals a day with vegetables, and you're going to focus on doing that with a half plate of veggies. So it's something actionable that you can do. Are you following me on this? So how about having a focus without a goal? All right, that's also something you can do. And what might be the benefit of that? The benefit? Why can't I say benefit today? I'm telling you, every episode there's one word that just gets me going. And that's it for today. All right, so if you have a focus without a goal, just like I'm just focusing on healthy behaviors, like I mentioned there, eating slowly, stopping at relative fullness, prioritizing veggies, but not getting obsessive about it. All right, that might take out the unhealthy risks, like skipping meals, becoming so restrictive, eating at certain time slots, and ignoring hunger and fullness, right? A focus calls more on your intrinsic motivation. It's more in a direction that serves you better long term, and it doesn't ever expire like goals do. So, by the way, off topic here, but I want to bring this up because this is the time of year where you may see some people trying to really do this behavior, and they might be white knuckling through it. So if you notice someone in the next however many weeks, months, or any time in your life that appears to have lost a fair amount of weight, do not compliment them. Okay? And I'm going to give you 3 reasons why not. Do not ever find them something else to compliment them on. I like how you commented on this. I like how you helped that. I loved how you held the door for that old person. Something like that, okay? All right. Number 1, they could have a serious illness like cancer, and they may not want you to know about it. They may actually be losing weight for unhealthy reasons, right? Because of a disease, all right? So, and if you don't know about it, you may have put them in a very awkward position where they may feel like they have to answer you. Number 2, they could already have an eating disorder or disordered eating, and your compliment just gave them reinforcement to continue that behavior. Yikes. And number 3, it implies that you thought they were unattractive prior to this, and now that they've lost weight, they've become attractive and more attractive in the world. So don't ever compliment someone for losing weight. Find something else to compliment them on. All right, now let's go back to focus. Using a focus approach offers advantages to goal setting without all the negative side effects, right? You don't have to worry about outcomes. You can wake up the next day, instead of saying, oh, I blew my diet, you could say, wow, I had some really nice moments where I ate slowly, or I ate slowly, but not as slow as I think I could have, and you can be actionable about it. I really waited until I was hungry to eat, instead of eating dinner and then going right into the refrigerator to see what I could find for a snack 10 minutes later. Talk about with yourself, and this is just an example, but I think it's a great example for this time of year, and it's something that consumes, like I said, it consumes a lot of thought with people, especially with all of the different weight loss approaches that are out there. If you look at all these weight loss approaches, they're very strict. They're very goal focused on getting you to just get to your number by any time, versus learning to enjoy eating, learning to be aware of what you're eating, practicing taking care of yourself with good food, maybe practicing trying different foods that you think might be interesting. All of these things, these focuses can serve you better in the long run. And hey, you might find that you don't really like diet food. Maybe you are sick of eating chicken and broccoli because that's what you can only eat on your diet, or gosh, let's go back. I remember in one of my first diets when I was a teenager, it was cottage cheese and pineapple. And it was like, I don't know that I ever want to eat that again, and it was like a teeny tiny little amount, and then later in the day there would be donuts in our house and I would be like just staring at the donuts, because definitely cottage cheese and pineapple wasn't satisfying. But anyways, that was just another example. So listen, before you rush off and set any goals for 2023, and I'm not saying don't set goals, and I'm not saying set goals. What I am saying is think about it a little bit and think about what might serve you best in the long run. What's going to give you behavior change that's going to serve you best over time. Maybe it's mixed, focus and goal, or maybe it's just focus. But I can tell you one thing, I don't think it's just goal setting. Because when X date comes and you have achieved that goal, what do you do the next day? About 100% of the people I know have a celebratory meal that is so big they end up feeling sick, right? And that's going, back to the bookends of the spectrum from being overly restrictive to overeating. So we like to live life balanced and in the middle. It serves us better. So Happy New Year's, everyone. If this is something you'd like to talk about further, please feel free to reach out to me. You can message me on Instagram, or you can email me at judy@judyarazosa.com. I will pop a link up to my Instagram if you prefer that into the show notes as well. And also judy@judyarazosa.com is in the show notes. I will see you back here next week on the Air Hug Community Podcast. Next week, we are talking about tapping with a tapping expert.